a standard and of a level that would produce the kind of the potential and possible sources of funding to put setting up tertiary institutions.
The reason for that, of course, would be that, aside from not putting proper projects together, we are also not able to fund adequately, and of course, you know very well that, when we talk about funding adequately, we're also looking at having our organizations or our projects to be sustainable, over a long, period of time. So we said the example of United Kingdom is easily the same story in most developed economies in the world. There is a strong correlation between the work of non-profits, non-governmental and social enterprise institutions in bringing about the required improvement in living standards worldwide. As participants in the sector, we are all faced with similar challenges in our quest to fulfill our organizational mandates. Okay? And even in the case of for-profit organizations, their CSR arm, which is the instrument through which they achieve most of their social impact projects. So let's just take a quick look. We'll come very soon to the funding area. These are, of course, the prescribed SDG guidelines for our social impact projects. Under them, you have eradication of poverty, you have eradication of hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender issues, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and justice, strong institutions and partnerships to achieve the goal. If you look at all this closely, you will certainly discover or find out that your area or your scope falls within these areas mostly. So what issues do we need to contemplate when we look at funding and financing for our social impact projects? Like I said earlier on, our schools are struggling. Our non-profit sectors are struggling. So many areas that we, really want to, make a change or make a difference or make, social impact across the world or in our various countries are also struggling. What do we do at this point in time? In Nigeria currently, the new president in Nigeria, President Tinubu, made a pronouncement on Wednesday, and he said that the government of Nigeria is going to stop funding Nigerian universities. So I know that must, come as a big shock, as it were, to many, school administrators, university administrators, as the case may be. But the fact is that is the reality on the ground. And the earlier the institutions learn, to stand independent of government, regarding their funding, the better for them. And as I always say, to our trainees, most of the time, I say, look, you don't fund education with school fees, and you don't fund education, two things you don't fund education with is school fees and government subventions. So at this point in time, every university in Nigeria, for that matter, must now begin, to learn how, to source funding as outside, government and outside school fees to be able to run their universities. These are the kind of things that schools like Harvard have done, and they have endowments, now worth over $50 billion, for which they get 5% payment on a yearly basis. because they get 5% of $50 billion on a yearly basis, they can very much well do what they want to do, with their research, with their scholarships, with the endowment of their professorial chairs and the rest like. Now, on our side, we need to come to this realization that we must make the effort, the concise, and scientific effort, I will say, the technical effort, I will say, to put in place the kind of fundings that will make our non-profit, our social enterprise, non-governmental organizations, to become buoyant, and then begin to, run reasonable budgets on our own. So the first thing you must take into consideration is when you want to, put in place, funding and financing for social impact projects, please ensure that you're passionate about it, ensure that you are dedicated to it, ensure that you conceptualize, appropriately what, you are about to do. Okay? That on its own helps, to put, your mind, or your organization's mind, in the proper frame. We have situations where, people set up non-governmental organizations, not because they have a passion for particular things they want to do, and because of that, they cannot, as it were, translate anything personal into, the scope of what they want to do. People set up schools, and in a very short while, what you observe is that, they begin to run out of, ideas, or they're not creative enough to get the processes, running, and doing very well. Some private universities which started about 15 years ago, 25 years ago, are doing so well, and some others, who are even backed by bigger organizations, some of them have even failed. So how and what has brought about this? I always give example of, certain universities and private educational institutions in sub-Saharan Africa that are doing so well, and they are more or less proliferating across, most parts of, Southern Africa, Central Africa, and the rest of it. A very good example, is the African Leadership College, the African Leadership University, and the African Leadership School. You observe that because they've been the proprietors, or rather, better still, the promoters, have this passion and dedication, and understand very clearly, what they want to, achieve by getting involved in the, educational sector. They are able to bring certain results, to play. So it's quite important, don't go in search of funding if you know that, you don't have, as it were, the passion and the dedication, to get your project, running. Then